So if you remember, on Tuesday we were talking about these things called contour lines. And contour lines, if you remember, are an imaginary line that represents equal points above sea level. And so what you're seeing here in this virtual sandbox is you're seeing a series of contour lines. So closed contours, if you remember, indicate that you have either a depression or you have some kind of a mountain or a knoll or a hill. So you see these closed contour lines here all indicate a hill, and you can see that, like, you kind of see from my hand that you're going up. You also see closed contour lines down here, and you'll see it's kind of blue down here. That indicates a depression of some kind. And in fact, a kind of a neat thing to think about is that we oftentimes have water in depressions, but you don't see water on the tops of mountains or hills. Now, one of the things that we also talked about in class was the idea that we have contour lines that are closer together, and when they're closer together, they represent a steeper slope. So I'm going to kind of move the sand here and make a steep slope, and then I'm going to take this sand over here and I'm going to make a shallower slope, right? So something that might be easier to hike up or down. And sure enough, if you take a look at this, you'll see that here the contour lines are very close together. It's a pretty steep slope. That's one that would take a lot of effort to climb up and down. Whereas over here you have contour lines that are spread further apart. And in that case, those contour lines are representing a shallower slope. Another thing that we talked about is we talked about valleys and ridges, and these are really important. So a nice example is if we can look at our mountain here. I kind of make our mountain a little bit bigger so we can do a couple things. If you remember, we have valleys and then we have ridges. And so ridges are kind of points that might extend out. Valleys are areas where water is going to fall. So I'll make a couple of valleys here and make a couple of ridges. And I'll make a valley kind of down into a little lake. Let the contour lines settle out. And if you remember when we talked about contour lines, lower contour lines point up into higher contour lines when you have a valley. And that's indeed exactly what we're seeing right here. When we have a ridge, something where I would kind of walk a little person out into, the higher contour lines point into the lower contour lines. Now, what this means to us, obviously, and we've talked about this before, is knowing where elevations are, knowing whether contour lines are closer together or further apart, whether things are steeper or things are shallower, knowing where our valleys are, knowing where our ridges are, tells us a lot about some different things. And one of the things it tells us about is drainage. So if you take a look, I'm going to flood this place. I'm going to pretend like there was a huge rainstorm. You'll see everything turn blue for a second, and then you'll be able to start seeing the water run. All right, so big rain. And sure enough, look at that, the water kind of runs right into those valleys. The water runs here and it pools in our low areas. So this virtual sandbox really gives you a sense of things that you might expect. You can also see that sometimes you can have little pool areas on the side of a mountain. So you've got this big mountain here, and you can have little mini depressions that kind of fit into a space. In glaciology terms, you might have an area where you have some kind of a glacial lake or something like that. It could be up on the side of a mountain. All right?